Hello again, and thank you for tuning back in to learn more about my fitness goals for 2024. If you saw the first part of this video, then you'll know I was talking about the importance of goal setting and also the kind of power that New Year's resolutions have. So if you haven't seen that video already, make sure you go and watch that. In the first part of this video, I spoke a lot about goal setting and New Year's resolutions and my feelings around that whole topic. And I know there are people that feel very strongly about New Year's resolutions, either because they believe they're pointless or because they believe that they are very powerful and something to be really excited about. So make sure you check out that video. I set some big lower body goals, and I also, shared some of my thoughts around that whole New Year's resolution goal setting process. Hopefully something that came across in that video was the level of thought that I was putting into my goals. You'll notice that I spend quite a lot of time talking about the backstory to the goals that I'm setting, because that involves some important context about why I'm motivated to achieve that goal, why it's important to me, and how I'm going to go about doing it as well. I talked quite a lot about how I would change my program to work more on deadlifts and squats. And that's what I think good goal setting is really about. It's about making sure you understand why you want to achieve that thing that you're working towards. So it's not just some random thing that you're chasing because you saw it on social media or because of peer pressure or something like that. And you also know how you're going to go about achieving it. And you don't need to have the full plan set in stone, but you need to know a little bit about how you're going to get started and what the general structure and what your general kind of action plans are going to be if you want to achieve those goals. So now I'm going to do the same thing with my upper body goals as well. Now, I don't share the same enthusiasm for upper body goals as I do for my lower body goals. I find there are less upper body exercises that I have that same enthusiasm for, where I have that same kind of commitment to getting better at them. I'd say I probably vary my upper body training even more than I vary my lower body training. Sometimes I want to get better at my barbell bench press. Other times I want to do dumbbell bench press with a bit more range of motion. Sometimes I want to get good at shoulder press. Sometimes I don't really care about shoulder press because I'm more focused on overhead Olympic lifting variations like snatches and jerks. But what I really want to do during this time is commit to one or two solid upper body goals, and then I can build in a bit more variety around those. One of the only constants in my upper body training when it comes to goal setting and progress is pull-ups. So since lockdown, around 2020, 2021, I realized that I had gained a lot of weight during that time and I struggled with pull-ups and chin-ups. And so pretty much every year since then, I've dedicated quite a lot of time to working on my chin-ups. I've consistently increased the number of reps that I can do in chin-ups and increased the number of weight I can use with low rep heavy chin-ups as well. And that was, like I say, that was with a chin-up. So that was where my palms were facing in, and that exercise varies quite a lot compared to a pull-up where your palms are facing away in terms of what muscles are contributing to the movement. And the pull-up where the palms face away from you tends to be a bit of a harder exercise. And I definitely feel the difference between my chin-ups and my pull-ups. I don't really like how uncomfortable my shoulders feel at the bottom of the pull-up. And I don't really feel that strong around my kind of elbows and forearms as I'm starting to pull myself up. I also find that even though I got pretty confident with chin-ups and felt pretty strong with chin-ups, if I went to the park with some of my young relatives, something like monkey bars would be very hard and very uncomfortable on my shoulders. So I feel that by working on my regular pull-ups, I can build strength that's going to translate to me feeling better in all of those places that I just described. I can currently do about 3 pull-ups, which I think is pretty good for someone who, for my kind of build, weighing around 100 kilos. I'm not too sad about that, but I would like to improve it. If I'm doing something like 4 sets of 3 pull-ups, I find that the quality of the final rep deteriorates quite harshly in that time. And the place where I notice that the most is in the top position of the pull-up, where I really start to kind of wrap my body around the bar, the shoulders come forward, and I'm starting to lift the chin to try and give a full sense of how high I'm getting on that last rep. So this gives me a really clear place to start. I need to start working on the top position of my pull-up so that I feel stronger there and I can complete my reps with confidence and with a consistent technique. The added benefit here, of course, is that I will also be working on my upper back and grip strength, which may, in some small way contribute to my deadlift goals. Although, I'm not expecting that alone is going to make me a better deadlifter, but it can't be a bad thing either. So unlike the deadlifts and the squats where I was talking about letting things just progress in a very linear fashion for a while, with the pull-ups, I think I am going to start to need to use some, position specific exercises like holds at the top of the pull-up just to start building the strength in the areas where I'm already clearly lacking. And I'm also going to work on some other, kind of tangentially related stuff. Like I've started doing single arm hangs as well, because that was something, like I said, with the monkey bar example, where hanging with my weight on one arm and just, the way your weight shifts when you're holding by one arm and the way you kind of twist slightly, I found that all really uncomfortable on my shoulder. So I'm working on having tension in my upper back and my shoulders when I'm hanging at the bottom of a rep as well. So I'm going to use a couple of those more kind of auxiliary exercises to build the strength in the pull-up, whilst also trying to remain as consistent as possible with my pull-up training. So goal number one is for, by the end of the year, to try and get around 5 or 6 pull-ups with my palms facing away from my body, but with much better control and technique than the 3 that I currently do. And that might be a bit of a conservative goal. I might be able to get more in that time, but like I say, I've got to do a bit of work to get back up to 3 good ones, and then I've got to add a few more reps on top of that as well. My second upper body fitness goal for 2024 is for my bench press. Now, I haven't done the barbell bench press for quite a long time. I started to prefer doing bench press with dumbbells just because I felt like I was getting a bigger stretch at the bottom of the movement, and I liked the slight feeling of, that freedom of motion that you get with dumbbells. It just felt like a good thing to be able to have to work to control the position a bit more. However, I've always liked how strong a barbell bench press feels when you can really get yourself packed into the bench and set up really tightly. And it's something that I've been meaning to go back to for some time. Now, as I said in my last video, I'm not really built to be a strength athlete. I'm very tall. I've got very long limbs. I am relatively, thin for other people of my weight. I don't have as much muscle mass as other 100 kilo guys probably have. So bench press has always been a real sticking point for me. And I was never able to bench more than 77.5 kilos for 1 rep. And quite a few times I tried to get that 80 kilo mark, which at the time was pretty much my body weight. And I always just really struggled to get that. That being said, I've been back on the bench press now for about 3 weeks already, just kind of getting into the groove. And today I was able to do 70 for 5 reps. So I feel like by virtue of being heavier and having about another 6 years of training under my belt, I've still managed to at least maintain and maybe improve the kind of pressing strength that I have, which you would hope so after 6 years of training. And now with a bit more time kind of regrooving the movement and getting confident with that again, hopefully I can push beyond that and see how much further I can go. At the moment, I feel pretty confident that I can do somewhere around 80 for 1 rep. And my goal by the end of the year is to get that up to maybe 90. 90 is the number I have in mind. Now, that's much less ambitious than the goals I set for the deadlifts. But again, the bench press for me feels a bit more like the squat, where I don't have the most advantageous kind of setup and build for that lift. And as most people will know, just adding 1 kilo on a bench press or 1.25 kilo plates on the bench press can sometimes feel like a massive change, and it can go from feeling relatively strong to feeling really difficult. So I don't want to overstate my confidence there. I want to kind of stay conservative, and if I can push beyond that, great. If I get to 90 and then I feel like working on some other upper body lifts instead, then that might be more appealing for me, given that I don't, I'm not as committed to the barbell bench press as I am to some of my lower body compound lifts. So again, as with the deadlift, I think that I have enough untapped potential in the bench press just by virtue of not really training it that much lately, that I will have a good long run now of just linearly progressing just by trying to either add weight or add reps most weeks while I'm bench pressing. And I don't think I need to do anything clever, anything really position specific or anything like that to start to see results there. If I do eventually start to struggle and find really common sticking points, or just hit a bit of a plateau, then I may start to do some, kind of programming tricks where, I try to add in cluster sets, or I try to work on, really kind of specific parts of the movement, but I'm not going to dive straight into that straight away. And this is a real kind of common thread with how I work towards my goals, and also how I set off working on my client goals, especially if I'm new to working with that client, is that I look for the most minimal changes I can make and see how much progress we can get for those. You'll go on social media and you'll see 5 exercises to help you improve your bench press. And you'll see 6 changes to make to your program design so that you always feel fresh and you always can add weight to the bar. But if you try and change everything at once, you don't really know what changes were actually useful and what changes weren't useful. And also, by throwing every new variable and every new stimulus at someone as soon as you start working with them as well, number one, you run the risk of kind of overloading them. If they're all things that make exercises more difficult or more intense, you run the risk of kind of, you know, making them feel like they've been hit by a truck. But also you may be exposing them to things that they're not actually ready for, either because there's a skill gap or because they're not as used to the movements and not as much in the groove of their training. And sometimes you can feel like if you bring out all the shiny new toys on day one, you waste a bit of time and a bit of stimulus with your client or with yourself. There's a popular analogy, I can't remember who said it, but there's someone, some strength coach who talks about robbing your athlete twice. When you give them lots of advanced techniques, you rob them twice, because when you give them those techniques, they don't really know how to make the best of them, so they don't get as good a stimulus from those techniques as they could. And you're also robbing them months or years down the line when they're ready for those things, but they've already done them, so they're not as big of a stimulus as they would be as if they were doing them for the first time. So you're robbing them by doing stuff they can't use effectively in the moment, and you're robbing them by not having as many new techniques to bust out when they are actually hitting a plateau and when they do actually need something fresh to help them drive on to new gains. But that's getting slightly into the realm of kind of training and program design and stuff. For the most part, what I'm trying to say is, if you're starting on a goal and you're, you know, working out how to get started in the gym, keep it simple, just focus on getting started, and you can fine tune things as you go. So only 2 goals for the upper body, not as in-depth as the lower body video, although I've probably still spoken for ages. I can't really tell how much time has passed. Now, I focused on strength goals because, you know, I work in a gym. I'm always, you know, in the gym in between clients. So it's very easy for me to work on those around, you know, my lifestyle and my time constraints. I would like to set some goals for things outside of the gym, but right now, with the way things are, I don't really want to commit to those things because I'm not quite sure how this year is going to go in terms of my free time and whether I can commit to a bigger project outside of the gym. One thing I am interested in getting back to is to do some kind of long distance charity walk. So back in 2022, I did a 56-kilometer hike with the other trainers that I was working with at the time, and we raised money for the charity Mind, and that was a great experience. That was really difficult, and my big toes really suffered for it in my boots. But walking that kind of distance, raising money for charity, and getting to see so much of the kind of English countryside as we went was like a really memorable experience. I think I'd like to do something like that again if I find myself in a place where I can dedicate that much time to building up my mileage and, you know, collecting money and things like that. So those are my main goals for this year. 2 very clear upper body goals there, and another kind of semi-vague thing that I might get round to. We'll see. So hopefully these videos have inspired you and given you some guidance on what kind of thought needs to go into setting your goals for 2024. Feel free to let me know what your goals are by commenting down below, or by following me on Instagram and sending me a message there. We can talk about your goals. Very exciting time. Hopefully you get a great start to the year and enjoy this, you know, time off you have now. And make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment, all that stuff. And I will see you again next time.